or context-specific versions of the meanings of the adjectives. A discussion of how you can plug in FOPC. A question about embodiment in GSMs. And also a sort of comparison between Shurdlu and the GSM proposal that ends up showing that the differences are quite deep and pretty much like a different stage of things. Shurdlu was there when it was there, but by working in a virtual world, you're basically solving the most basic problems that the GSMs are trying to solve on their own. Finally, there's a proposal for what I call empirically sound semantics, which I think is quite interesting. It's pretty tangential to what we have over here. And this is a proposal for getting definitions of the meanings of symbols, or generic action, not even actually symbols or signs, in terms of, not of language-like symbols, but in terms of sort of more physical descriptions of external reality or models of mind that are not language-like and which can actually be acquired through observation, not through introspection. Most semantic theories are basically based on introspection. We assign a meaning to a word that we think holds, and then we try to find out whether it holds or not. And this basically theory breaks down the meaning of a given sign into two parts, into production conditions and reception effects, and all of these are empirically observable. So, in conclusion, we saw all of these different things. You had a look at the motivation, at the actual proposal, at the implemented system, at the evaluations, the discussions. The central theme was, how can we build cooperative situated conversational assistants around grounded situation models, which are exactly what we said. The contributions were basically this whole proposal, the grounded situation model proposal, containing all of the components we talked about, including the implemented system. The news, we have 3 novelties above the state of the art in conversational robots. We have a behavioral repertoire that's comparable to parts of the token test for children, and a quantitative performance that's pretty much workable, not infallible, but we can actually complete tasks without a lot of effort, for this level of complexity at least. So Epimetron. In the introductory section, I stated upfront and discussed the vision of the thesis, which is basically situated conversational assistance. But if one takes a higher viewpoint, he might ask, so why do we need SCAs for humanity? And by taking an even higher viewpoint, one can ask, okay, and if we are going to have SCAs and other intelligent robots and machines, where should they fit within the order of things and the order of society? So this is quite a difficult question, and of course it needs very deep consideration, further reaching examination, and so on. And I'm not going to be able to answer it, of course, but I'm going to sort of finish the thesis not with an answer, but with a wish. So may the day come when humans and their artificial partners can coexist in harmony and peace, enabling each other to utilize their full potential, and most importantly, helping each other towards fulfilling their true purpose of existence. Thank you very much.
We have this green ball, and we've misclassified it. Mm-hmm. And it's actually should be in an adjacent classification. But we have these models, the model of what we believe, and also what we believe. And what I was wondering is, in that example, I kind of expected that there'd be a conversational moment where the system would say, I think it might be green. Could this be the same object? Asking the conversant. And I didn't hear that. I'm wondering why. And then also embedded in my question is, what does it mean to have an adjacent classification? How do you do the evaluation of the reflection of these models that could take advantage of these things? Because misclassifications are the whole, in some sense, essence of having these separate models, probably.
It's a very interesting question, first of all, and I absolutely agree that this is sort of one of the next steps to be taken. So the way that things are right now, the categorical classifiers are fixed at the beginning of the system. And we have no way to train them in either in an online manner before we start the conversation, or even more so, we have no way to adapt them during the conversation. What we ideally would like to do, and what humans do all of the time, is that they basically readapt their categorical boundaries to conform with the categorical boundaries of others. And this is sort of like a small version of the more generic problem of language learning, first language learning and alignment, which is generally the question of how can I align my situation model with somebody else's situation model, not in terms of contents, but in terms of the structure and the way that the structure grounds out. So let me show you actually something that's related to it. Go to the slides. In the theoretical discussion, there is a discussion of aligning situation models. It's the visual system. Here. So, but this is sort of a theoretical proposal. There is a description of external reality. There is an internal situation model. And I posit a set of 4 stages, qualitatively different stages, that connect external reality to the situation model. The first one is the sensor projection. So how do I get sensory streams from whatever is out there? This might be different if we have different eyes or different cameras, different mirrors, or whatever. The second is the individuation stage. How do I break the sensory streams into information that belongs to different discrete objects? It's like segmentation for vision, if you want. The third is a property extraction stage. How on the basis of these parts of the sensory streams, I actually extract properties like size, color, and so on. So this sort of summarization routines that there are over there. The fourth one is a category projection stage. So how do I actually go from the properties to specific categories? The misalignment that we talked about deals with realigning on the fly this stage. More generically, we might even want to actually align some of the other stages too. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it's one of the sort of very, very good directions to take in the near future.
So just to follow, the way that it fixed itself was simply happening to get a different classification because lighting changed or something else.
Exactly. And the categorical classifier did not move its boundaries.
So that's why there was no conversation, because it was believed that classifications are absolute.
Exactly. And if we were unlucky, actually, we might have gone on like this for blue. And, you know, if the human didn't change his words for green or blue, if he didn't say blue, we would never go on with a task. Yeah.
This question is about embodiment. Now, here you proposed a conceptual design on how to make conversational agents. I assume that's how you are looking at this work, not as a specific system that you're going to give out.
It's a conceptual design, but specified up down to the level of pseudocode, for example. Yes. Mm-hmm. For some parts.
That I am in different places. I consider laboratories in different places that they have different systems. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Different heads, different eyes, different hands. How, in other words, the body of the system is changing. How would I take this framework and apply it across different embodiments?
This is a very good question, and it deals with the actual possibility to reuse this framework across different sort of environments and goals. So there is a discussion of this in the thesis too. Let me get there. Just 1 second.
I would like to pay special attention to the embodiment as consisting also of the sensory system.
Yes. So a little more generic question. So the answer is that there is part of the system that's going to remain the same, and there is part of the system that has to change. This is sort of the generic agent model that I propose in the thesis for GSM-based systems, and the body appears within sort of 3 different areas. First of all, it appears as this hard boundary separating the agent from the world, and definitely the sensors and the effectors are part of the body. Then apart from that, there are areas that are heavily influenced by the specifics of the sensors and the effectors. And these are the first stages of the sort of the sensory system. plus the final stages of the sort of motor control system or action generation system. Apart from that, also the action list and anything that has to do with that, which is pretty much restrained to what effectors we have. So this is the second part that needs to change when we're changing embodiments. On the other hand, sort of the basics of the situation model, they basically are constrained by what we need to notice about the situation, and this might not depend on the embodiment. This basically depends on what the goal of the system is and what the behavioral specification is. So a big part of all of this can actually basically remain and be transferred across embodiments. And also notice that within these, there is also the description of the physical body, which needs to change too, but this is like a pretty small thing. We just need to change the physical model of the robot as it is seen by itself. So the answer is that you can go across embodiments. There are parts of the system that need to change in order to customize for different embodiments, but as long as your goal is similar and justifies a similar choice of components for the situation, you can reuse that part. And one can also foresee other things. So at one point, we might be able to sort of semi-automize the process that creates a customized GSM on the basis of behavioral specifications. And also a point where we can go to a situation where we have some form of a CAD program where we can sort of paste and customize existing models of minds in order to create new robots across different embodiments. And one way or another, in much simpler terms, this is happening, for example, in the robotic studio by Microsoft, or very simple stimulus response kind of things and so on. It's one such case.
With this last thing that you referred to, you're basically referring to some compositionality property that GSMs could have, so that you could develop in some way some algebra or calculus of GSMs to tell you how to put them together?
This is another possibility. I was mainly referring to something like a classic sort of computer-aided design program for building houses or stuff like that. So we can reuse parts of houses and just customize them for different environments and so on. Definitely, if one goes to sort of the more theoretical side for a while, he can see that you can go and talk about enumeration of grounded situation models, similarity of grounded situation models. Even when you start talking about sort of partial containment and temporal alignment, you can create some sort of a calculus or algebra. And, but this mainly deals with the contents and not the structure and the form, and can also be a very useful tool for many other sort of theoretical and practical endeavors.
So can you really actually imagine stuff?
That's a good question. I mean, do we really have imagination over here? So, first of all, one thing to notice is that we're actually sort of playing a little bit with the semantics of one word. Normally, the statements that you saw over here would have been phrased as there is a blue object on the left, and not imagine a blue object on the left. The underlying assumption is that in the case of an imagined statement, you don't place the token that's being imagined within the situation model that corresponds to the actual situation, but you place it within a situation model that corresponds to an imaginary situation, which you do not expect to update through the senses. It's sort of isolated from the world. Now, in that respect, what we really have here is a there is statement and not an imagined statement. But on the other hand, the processes and the mechanisms are exactly the same. So if we decide to cut out the senses, it becomes an imagined statement. Now, is this real imagination? Here again, the underlying idea is that in terms of the GSM, imagination can only be some sort of, however complicated, resynthesis of sensory-derived things. So there's no ex nihilo imagination. We're just recomposing things that somehow came there. What do I mean? Say that we actually trained the robot in order to learn the meaning of 4 words: green, blue, small, and big. And we trained it by showing a small green object and a big blue object. Then, when we actually ask it to imagine a small blue object, which it had never seen before, then it can definitely imagine it, and then it can have the right sensory expectation for it. So when it actually sees one, it can say, oh, this is what I imagined. So at that level, we were never actually given the specific combination of, the small blue object. We never saw it before. But we were able to recompose existing sensory experiences in order to create the expectation. And take, for example, the celebrated example of the unicorn. Again, the unicorn does not exist, but it comes out of parts that do exist, one way or another.
I'm getting us to how the imagination creates a prior for the world, and whether that prior is actually used when you actually experience the world.
Yes.
For example, if you say, imagine a blue ball, and he turns to the right afterwards and he sees a green ball, will it match the blue with the green together?
No. That's exactly the point. So the sensory expectation, let me go back there to the matching algorithm.
So having imagined something does not change what you actually perceive when you look that way?
No, having imagined something creates a sensory expectation. The sensory expectation can either be verified or disverified. If it is verified, then the imagined token and the new token is going to have the same identity, the same unique identifier, and you're going to be able to refer to it in a continuous manner. If it is not verified, then the imagined token is going to be destroyed, and a new token with different identity is going to replace it. So you're going to perceive it as a lie or a change anyway from what you heard before, and give different identity to the new object. So this is exactly how the sensory expectation works.
Simple follow-up question, and it has to do with if we have imagination and it has some value, then there's some use for it. So what is something that the imagination will change in this system?
Very good question. So the basic idea, the basic stance that's being taken here is that the purpose of minds in general is producing the right actions that are going to be able to serve their goals. There's also a discussion about whether these goals are sort of universal across living beings or artifacts or not. That's an open question. Let's not talk about it. So an internal action, such as imagining something, cannot be useful in any way if it doesn't in some way result to an external action that's going to be able to go towards the persuasion of the goals. But it is, of course, very useful because by imagining situations, you can sort of reason about situations, you can plan about things, and so on. So in that respect, as an intermediary towards predictions and planning, which are going to lead to actions, it can have value. On its own, an internal representation or any internal action does not have any value. That's it.
But to follow up, it could help you by putting together things that you have seen in the past and creating new things, some of which may be probably irrelevant, probably most of the time.
I guess I was hoping for an example of that imagination changing the planning strategy or success. Do you have something you can think of where it would or should do that?
Well, for example, through the compositionality of language, you can try to take many alternative scenarios. So knowing that you have, for example, 5 possible ways to arrange things on a table, and being able through language to go through one and the other, you can make counterfactual reasoning and decide about what the right example is. So I guess that Johnson Laird in the Mental Models book provides many examples of how counterfactual reasoning on the basis of concrete exemplary situations can help towards that. So take, for example, something like dealing with a statement like, all A are B, some B are C, whether, all B are C, or all A are C, and so on. So some sort of syllogism. In order to deal with such a statement, you can basically create exemplary situations and reason on the basis of them. So counterfactual reasoning and enumeration of possibilities through the compositionality and enumerability of language.
Just give a simple answer, second answer, Ted, which is if you're building a robot that's sorting objects and you tell the robot that one's slippery, that might change the plan for which ones you move and which ones you leave in place in order to do the sort. So,
absolutely.
In general, language is great at disclosing hidden properties, which perception might be more expensive to discover.
I absolutely agree. In that case, you're also talking about sort of not so much the value of internal imagination, but the value of informed statements. So how you can transfer information about the situation from one agent to the other, not through the agent sensing the thing, but through the knowledge that the other agent possesses. And when it comes to cooperation, this is one of the basic things, and I absolutely agree it's essential.
Okay, so it looks like we're done with this public part of the defense, so we'll thank you. That's the